Unpacking Mormonism and Other Religious Trauma is meant for educational purposes only. Hello and welcome back
you have serious issues, you know that?
Yes. Welcome back to Unpacking Mormonism and Other Religious Trauma. I am your host, Sarah Westbrook. As you just heard, I am joined by my very honorary co-host, Mason Westbrook. Yes, Mason, I have serious problems. I am in counseling right now for them. Thank you very much.
I didn't say problems, I said issues. They're not exactly the same.
I have both. Alrighty. And we are also joined by my high school best friend and hero, savior. She kept me in line. What didn't you do?
I need a cape. I need a
That's a lot
cape.
of names for sure.
You know, I do have that Superman cape. No, actually, my dad has that. So if I can reconcile with my dad, I will get you the Superman cape from my 6th grade
in other words,
party.
you're going to need to borrow one from somebody else.
No, honestly, I actually felt more like a babysitter sometimes than a superhero.
You know, that makes sense because I needed mentoring, and your life experiences forced you to grow up.
I like that much better. A mentor. I was a mentor.
You were a mentor, but also my best friend.
Yes.
Yes, we were best friends. So Zoe shows up in the book as Zoe. Would you like to introduce yourself, Zoe?
Yes. My real name is Ronnie.
Hey, Ronnie. And we will
Sarah.
be using that name. I love you.
The mystery's over.
Dun, dun, dun.
And everybody on the show now knows who you are. And anybody who reads the book is going to talk about how amazing you are, how amazing you were for me.
Oh, I need a friend like her.
Everybody needs a friend like you. Everybody needs a friend like you. So a couple of announcements upcoming. So we are doing an in-between these series. So right now we are in the middle of the truth-telling series. You're going to have a couple of breaks in those as we do some trauma-bonded series where I am interviewing several of the primary characters that are showing up in the book. So like in a couple of weeks, I'll be recording with Declan from the book. And that way our readers can hear your side of the story, Ronnie, because you know, for a lot of people, they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that this happened to one person. Or is that really how it went down? And so I'm like, well, what better way to figure out how it went down than to actually talk to the people that lived it with me. And I actually had you on as a guest previously at one point in the podcast. I don't remember if we ever recorded it because we had technical difficulties.
No, it went up.
No, I think it had technical difficulties. Yeah, we did a promo from it, but I don't think it ever. We are going to fix it. Anyway, but one of the things that you and I have talked about is how you were impacted by what happened to me in high school, and that you had years worth of shit, I'm going to say, that you had to go through and work through because of how my father and mother, both of my parents, handled the situation with me. And we are here to talk about that today.
Yes. Sorry, I keep clinking on the microphone.
I can't hear it. You're good. Clink away.
My button. No, to understand my story, and you know, I have a backstory like all good characters have. And I come from a broken home. I come from a home where my dad wasn't involved, where my mother was working full time. And if we're being honest, most of my growing up years, she was in a bar every weekend. And she's changed. She's a much better
Working
mom.
Or partaking?
Partaking. And she has changed. She's completely left that life, and she's a fantastic mother and a wonderful grandmother now.
Right.
But during that time, I found a lot of stability from my friends.
Right.
And their families. And to finally have found that, the ideal family, the perfect family where they just welcome you in and they, feed you breakfast. I mean, come on.
Right. You were at my house, I think, in your free time, probably more than you were at your house except to sleep.
Yeah.
For a lot of those years. So let's remind. So for those of my listeners who have not yet read the book, I'm going to give you just a little spoiler alert. So spoiler alert, if you are reading the book and you want to pause this episode now and come back to it after you've read the book, now is the time to do so. Here's your pause to pause. Pause. Okay, there we go. But so the story goes that, Ronnie, you and I met my freshman year, which would have been your junior year, correct? Yep. And we were marching band. I played the flute.
You know what? I actually think we might have met before you were in high school because you remember my cousin lived across the street from you.
Oh, yes.
And she was trying out for cheer and you were helping her.
Yes.
And I was over one day and I was like, oh my gosh, who is that crazy girl that you're trying to get help you?
All right. So I'm going to come back to that so you can clarify what the word crazy. No, actually, just do it now. Define it. Define crazy girl. Yeah,
Okay.
I got to know this.
Y'all, junior high Sarah was hyper.
Y'all,
I know you're all super surprised.
42-year-old Sarah is hyper.
Except now she's beaten down a little bit by life.
I'm still
Not
hyper.
quite as hyper.
I'm still
Now
hyper.
she's more ADHD than just hyper.
Right. Attention deficit hyperactivity.
Right, that's one part of it. I get it. Thank you for slowly pointing it out.
All right, Ronnie. Sarah Lee was out of control hyper with an underdeveloped frontal cortex because I was 13. Hormonal, normal, crazy person. Yeah.
Now knowing what I do and having the life experience that I've had and the education that I've had, I see that a lot of that hyperness and that willingness to just please and be there for people and be helpful and kind to the extent of like craziness was
right. Kind to a fault, to a way that ends up being toxic to the self.
Yes. And that's 100% how you were. At that time, I just thought you were crazy hyper Sarah.
It's interesting to me that you're still very much that way. You're still a very kind person. You still reach out. You still will help sometimes even to a fault. But the reasons that need to be accepted or that need to please is at least mostly gone. That's not really a part of why you do it anymore.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to me that the behavior is about the same. The motivation has changed a lot.
The behavior has changed substantially. So, Mason, we have a teenage daughter, and you know how like you get them, and this is just
wait. We have a teenage daughter?
Oh, wait, hang on. That's with the other guy. I'm just kidding. Yes, our daughter, Katie, so it's actually really funny. So Katie, our daughter, is starting her sophomore year this year. And so, Mason, as you hear that story from Trauma Bonded, I mean, this is the year. Like swap Katie's in my bodies. And I cannot even imagine doing to Katie anything. It's surreal. It's so just, I don't know, eye-opening, because when I look at my daughter, Katie, who I love dearly, and her friend group, we were normal teenage girls, like that over dramatic, loud, spastic, everything's got sass and spunk. And that's actually one of the reasons that Miss Vincent, Michael's mom, didn't like me, was because I was just too much. Ronnie's laughing, you all. You need to make that laugh heard, girlfriend. I was just too much in your face at that age. So a lot of it's that age appropriateness just intensified because of my trauma. And then, yes, I have ADHD. I don't take medicine for it. I take coffee instead, which can make me a little jittery sometimes. But yeah, so I think it's also important. I almost called you Zoe because I'm just so used to it, Ronnie. So it's also important, I think, for our audience to know, Ronnie, that you are not Mormon.
No. Yeah.
But you definitely grew up surrounded by Mormonism. How did that play into your story? And how well did I do in the book of illustrating the dynamics of this lovely small town, Snowflake, Taylor, Arizona, mostly Snowflake, Arizona? How did I do with that, do you think?
So I did grow up not LDS in a very predominantly LDS community. Like, I think that my church youth group had 12 members because that's how many kids weren't Mormon at the time at the high school.
Right. So there were the Mormons, and then there was Ronnie's church.
Yes. No, I'm exaggerating, of course, but it felt that way.
I'm not the only one, Mason. Did you hear that?
It was really...
No, I didn't hear it.
It was like, not only was I struggling with finding just acceptance within my own family with my broken home and my parents who had other interests besides taking care of their child, but I was also trying to find a friend group where I fit in, because at that time in high school, if you weren't one of the Mormon kids, you weren't a good kid.
Right. It reflected on your quote unquote
Yes.
worthiness and personal value.
And I was actually a really good kid.
Y'all, this kid kept the Mormon kid in line.
I did.
Well, that's compounded by the fact that if you're in a Mormon community and you've been exposed to Mormonism and still are not Mormon, well, obviously you've got serious issues. 'Cause
Yes.
How could
Yes.
anybody hear the Mormon message and not want to immediately be a part of it? There must be something wrong with you. And so, yeah, I mean, it's one thing if they look at you and you're like, yeah, well, they've just never been exposed. Yeah, look at her. She's a good person. She's a dry Mormon, right? We love to say that you're a dry Mormon. Basically, you're a Mormon. You just haven't gotten baptized.
Which is so insulting.
You guys, I've never heard that term before. I am
Seriously?
Dry Mormon?
I'm serious.
Wow.
Growing
Yeah.
up in Snowflake, Taylor, I've never heard that before.
Okay, so
I'm insulted.
But how
They
many
must have
times?
given up on you.
Yeah.
Right, but Ronnie, how many times did you hear the term or the word like, "Oh my gosh, you should be Mormon"?
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
how,
All
how
the time.
How
That's
are
the
you?
same thing. So basically,
such
you're a
a
dry
good,
Mormon.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
How are you such a good person, not a Mormon? Like these two things don't compute because
Yes.
you can't be this good unless you have Mormonism in you. And it's insulting.
Yes.
It is so insulting.
They'd say, "You're not Mormon." No, I'm not. Well, you act like a Mormon. Because I'm not kidding you. I would get that all the time.
Oh,
You
I'm
act
sure.
like a
I'm
Mormon.
sure.
What do you mean I act like a Mormon?
Right.
Because I'm a nice person, because I like to help people.
because
That-
you had integrity, because you were generous,
means
because you were honest.
Yeah.
Well, and how did that, Ronnie, influence your ability to date when you became of dating age and interact at like the school dances and like talk about your dating pool and that side of Snowflake Taylor a little bit?
Oh, that's really easy to talk about. I did not date. Did not date because I was not Mormon. The boys who were Mormon were not allowed to date me.
Because you were not
Because I was
potential
not-
marriage material.
Correct. Because I would never convert to Mormonism, so I was not a good potential mate. And so at that time, I won't say the only, most of the kids who were not LDS in this community at that time were, I'm trying to think of a word to describe it.
I feel like you guys had to kind of band together. It was like, okay, there's the Mormon community that are dating together, and then we're the leftovers, and we get to choose from what's left
we were
over.
like, intermarrying and interdating within our little teeny tiny non-Mormon community. And there was nobody left over for me to match up with.
Right, because you were excluded as a potential in this community.
Yes.
Well, and it's so funny because in our primary friend group in the book, like when I talk about Kat, Cassidy, Declan, you, me, I'm trying to think who else was there as part of that core group of us that like we did pretty much everything together. There was Kat, Cassidy, Declan, you, me. I feel like I'm missing some of the people that weren't like characters in the book, like Billy would pop in and out. Cameron would pop in and out.
Catherine, but she disappeared
Catherine,
for a while.
right, because she moved away and then came back.
Yeah.
Catherine was there for a little while.
She was there for a little bit.
And then Johanna would pop in and out on occasion.
She moved away.
Right, she went to New Mexico quite early. And then Ben would pop in and out on occasion.
Yes.
So of those 10, like of the 10 core, that was kind of our 10. We were, whatever. But of those of us that basically did everything together, it was Kat from the book, you, me, Declan, and Cassidy.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So it was us 5. Oh, and then Michael.
And then Michael when he moved here.
So it was us 6. And of those 6, I was the only Mormon.
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't that funny? I never even thought of that before.
Right. Because my primary, even with cheer, when I was in cheerleading, the kids I got along with best were not Mormon. And it was because I felt like I could be me and that I didn't have to work as hard to be liked because I didn't have to perform. You could see my ugly side and you guys would still love me. I remember Declan and Kat coming to me at one point and being like, you need to knock off this lying and storytelling bullshit because it's driving us crazy. And so they kind of gave me a little snippy, knock it off, Sarah. But we were still like besties the next day. We were still everything. So whereas like in Mormonism, it was like, oh, Sarah told a lie. Okay, she's dangerous. Now we need to distance. And it's so funny when I've come back for the class reunions and people group off. There is a group of about 8 to 10 people that every time we come for these reunions, I call them the Righteous Clan. And we actually, at our last reunion, which was just a couple years ago, my 20-year graduating reunion, we got together. And as the majority of our class went around and talked to each other, there were like the 8 that separated. They were the holier than thou Righteous Clan. And I was like, who? And I almost got invited into it, Ronnie, because my husband was a bishop. And he was getting scoped out to be the stake president. And so one of those individuals, who I won't name because that's not fair and it's a small community and whatnot, people will know who I'm talking about, came over and they were like, wow, I never thought that you would be married to a bishop. And I'm like, how insulting. Number one, I didn't marry a bishop. I married a mailman. Go ahead, Vince.
Yeah. M-A-L-E, right?
M-A-L-E. M-A-N.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
U-S-P-S. M-A-I-L, mailman, right? But it was so insulting. I was like, and then they told me how amazing it was that I had repented of my, life before and that I've become this huge person. And at that time, I'm looking at him going, I don't believe the church is true. I just haven't announced it yet. I think I've told you, Ronnie, you did for years.
Behind every good man is a really good woman, unless you have a past.
So
okay.
To go off that little tangent,
squirrel.
I did know for a long time that you were questioning the church. Even back when we were in high school, you and I would have long theological discussions where you would ask me, what does your church teach about this? How does your church look at this? What about this? And you were freshman, sophomore in high school when all that was going on?
Mostly freshman. I think I was doing that with you more when Johnny was around, because when I was dating Johnny from the book, I was not possessed by somebody basically, and I was still able to interact with my friend group, whereas when that switched to Michael, it was almost Michael above all else. But none of y'all knew about it. You just knew that we were gone a lot, but okay, so here, let me ask this question. Hey Ronnie, when did you find out that Michael and I were dating?
Oh my gosh. When did I really, really, really know?
Yeah,
or when did I start to just suspect?
Okay, both. When did you suspect?
Okay, so you guys weren't as sneaky as you thought you were.
What?
And so me and Declan and Cassidy.
Yeah. Ronnie's like, all right, Sarah, I have not spent the last 18 months with these characters. I know them by
I'm
their
like,
real name.
I read the book once.
So let me
remember
just
the
say
names.
this. If you say the wrong name, then what we'll do is we'll just have you record their names afterwards. And Alex, my amazing producer, will cut in their pen name so that way we protect their identity. So if you fuck it up, it's no big deal.
Oh, good.
That's what the digital world is about. The show is not live, so just
It's a very good
yeah,
chance
you're good.
that I'm going to mess it up.
Yeah, if you mess it up, we'll fix it. Well, and I'm recording with Declan, and if he's like, yeah, I don't care if you use my real name, then I won't. So, and then my audience will be like, who's that? So yeah, you're good.
Anyway, another squirrel.
Another squirrel. Yep.
Okay.
Sorry, my audience
Back.
loves my squirrels. Otherwise, they don't stick with me.
Back to what we were talking about.
Maybe they just put up with them.
Yes, many of our. Yeah, that's true. All right, so go ahead. So suspect versus no.
We had suspicions. I won't say that we knew because, we hadn't seen it for ourselves with our own two eyes, but we knew everything except for if we would have saw it ourselves with our own two eyes. When I knew was the day that your father showed up and yanked you out of school. That was when I knew. And Michael was like, oh, yeah, there's probably something I should tell you guys.
Oh, did he really tell you guys?
No, I'm paraphrasing.
No, but I mean, like, did Michael tell you that we had sex when my dad came and yanked me out of school?
No.
Just,
no.
Sarah and I are together and
Yes.
her dad must have found out?
Yes.
Hey, head on over to Amazon and buy your copy of Trauma Bonded, a true story of navigating attachments forged in complex PTSD by me, Sarah Westbrook.
The mighty and resilient Merrimack River, carving through the communities of our great region. My name is Linda Lorden, proud president of Merrimack County Savings Bank, and like the river that serves as our namesake, we're a constant yet ever-changing presence. Because to us, it's bigger than banking. It's about powering communities and putting people first. It's about knowing where you came from and where you're going. That's Merrimack style. Visit us at themerrimack.com.
No, we were in your bedroom one day when you were sneaking me into your house because I wasn't allowed there anymore.
Do you have any idea how many people I snuck into my house?
That you finally told me everything that had really happened.
Too many, I think, is the right answer. Too many.
Too many.
Way too many. Yeah.
Well, and to go from being a member of the family that, they set you a place for breakfast and you're hanging out there every day to all of a sudden they've just yanked your friend away from you.
Right. You were shut out.
Well, and according to the book, at least, so correct me if I'm wrong, but
I'll let Ronnie correct you if I'm wrong, because part of this is how did I do?
Her dad essentially accused you of being a part of the problem too. So not only did you get yanked away, but now you're also to blame for the issue, even though you didn't even know about it.
Are you ready for this? Because dun dun dun, I wasn't Mormon. So I had to be part of the problem.
Well, every non-Mormon wants to be having sex all the time. So yeah, for sure.
No, you're wrong. Every non-Mormon wants Sarah to sleep with Michael. And that was the threat for my dad. Honestly, that's kind of like he wasn't Mormon, he was smoking. Well, and sex in Mormonism is like super forbidden anyway.
Right.
Until you're married. Like it's don't talk about sex, don't think about sex. Don't act on any of your sexual urges in a natural way as you're growing up. Get married as soon as you graduate from high school or are home. So for women, get married as soon as you graduated from high school. For men, get married as soon as you get home from your mission and have a lot of sex so that way you can have a lot of babies. And it's like, that's traumatic in itself. That's a podcast for another day. So what was that like for you, Ronnie? Like, that's why we're here today. We're here to talk about, number one, how did I do at being honest? Like, from your perspective of the events that were going on and what you saw, how did I do at writing that honestly? And then number two, what was that like for you? Because I had never even considered the trauma to my friends. Like, when I found out that my dad had called the parents and screamed at the parents of my friends and blamed all of my friends for this, it was for me, because I was 16, it was all about me, of course. Therefore, I was embarrassed. I was angry. But it took until, I don't know, I was writing the book to really comprehend how my father's actions impacted other people. Like, how did that impact you? And I would say you and Michael were probably the most negatively impacted. Michael, because my dad tried to have him thrown in jail and all of those things. And you, because you had a family, an ideal, what you thought was an ideal family, to you're not allowed to have anything to do with our family anymore, to my family showed up for your college graduation to cheer you on.
Roller coaster ride of emotions. And I know that's such a cliche, but I really can't think of anything else to describe it, because like I said, it was to the point that I felt like I was part of the family. I mean, your mother even made my prom dress for me. She even, helped me with a dress for my cousin's wedding, and the whole, come on over, join us.
Right,
And
because from the beginning of freshman year until April of my sophomore year. Mm-hmm. So basically for you, it was like the last 6-7 weeks of your senior year. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But for those 2 years, even over the summer, you were at my house more often than you were at yours, and you ate breakfast with my family almost every single day, Monday through Friday. And if I wasn't at cheer or band, you and I were together.
Yeah. And that's...
And mostly at my house.
That's also what makes it so hard, is not that just that not only did I lose a best friend, but I lost a family on top of it. Mm-hmm. And my things weren't going well at my house at that time. My mother had remarried by that point, and she was no longer bar hopping, but my stepdad and I did not get along at all. And so for me, it was so much easier to not be home. Mm-hmm. And so when you had a place that you could go where you could...
Right, you could show up anytime you wanted to.
Oh, yeah.
And you were welcomed in like the big sister. Like,
yeah.
My siblings adore you.
100%, and even, I even had a relationship with your younger siblings. It was awesome. And to go from having that kind of friend and that kind of support system to all of a sudden everything has just been yanked out from underneath you.
Right, because it's not like we had a family emergency and we moved away, so then you were dealing with loss and sadness because your family relocated. It was, you're not allowed back in here. You're part of the reason why Sarah's all fucked up. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Don't come over. Don't talk to her. Don't anything.
Yeah.
And that came from my dad, but my mom didn't stop him.
No. It did eventually get to a point where your mom saw that it was affecting your mental health quite an extent. And she did start sneaking me into the house and finding ways to sneak for us to be together.
Yeah, I remember that.
But
even that's got to be traumatic.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's so fine, you have your friend back, sort of, but it's all under the pretense of if anybody finds out, we're screwed.
Yes.
And would make the whole situation worse.
Mm-hmm.
Well, do you remember the night that you, Declan, and Kat came to the house to pick up my yearbook and then my parents wouldn't give it to you from the yearbook signing dance? Mm-hmm. Do you want to talk about what that was like for you guys? Like, because I remember hearing my dad say some things. It was pretty rude. It was not nice. What are your memories of that evening?
Honestly, the thing that I take away from it the most was just leaving and wanting to bawl.
Yeah.
Because here was this person that I had thought that I had this really close, amazing,
You're talking about with my dad. You thought you had almost a father figure
in my life.
Well, and it's important to say that when you were in my home, I felt safer because my parents were on their best behavior. Mm-hmm. When you weren't there, it was chaos. It was manipulative. It was gaslighting. It was problematic. But when Ronnie was over, everybody felt safer. So when we talk about yours and my relationship, when you were in our home, my siblings also felt safer because my parents wouldn't show their true colors with you as a witness to that. So you had no idea how bad. I mean, you'd heard me complain about them, but I remember you being like, Sarah, you're pretty lucky. Like, stop complaining. Your parents really aren't that bad and whatnot. But when you were at my home, I was safe from my parents, and my siblings were safe from my parents, which is, I mean, it's just heart-wrenching. When you hear that, it's heart-wrenching.
It was just, it was hard to
be abandoned by a second father.
Yes, essentially, yes,
Yeah.
yes. You know, and how do you put that into words? Like,
Right.
Yeah. Well, and I again, even more than abandoned, you were, I mean, it was a complete flip. It wasn't like he walked away and said, I'm not interested in having you around anymore. It's he walked away and you're the devil.
yes,
So yeah, you go from this person that is essentially a father figure in your life to then this completely different behavior that you don't know what to do with. You're left reeling. And yeah, I mean, it has to be traumatic. And while abandonment is obviously going to be traumatic, I can only imagine that abandonment and a reversal of behavior is only going to make it worse.
So after all of that, Ronnie, because like you went to NPC, or not NPC, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
you
no,
went
you're right. You're right.
Oh, you did do 2
I did
years.
2 years at NPC and then 2 years at my other.
So then how come we didn't continue to have a friendship? Like what?
No, we did. I mean, it wasn't.
I mean, it was different because you were in college. I thought you went straight to NAU.
No. Because I was
Ooh. Okay,
there.
no, I lied in my book. I said she went to NAU right away. I'm wrong. She went to NPC. Because then that means you and I were at NPC at the same time.
Yes, and
I
I
did-
saw you in the play that you were in, and I was there when you were dating the other boy with the broken collarbone.
Curtis. Well, see,
And then I was
Curtis and I were not really dating. It was weird. It was like there was more than friendship, but we definitely were not boyfriend, girlfriend. We were not going on dates. It was more like hanging out, but I would have never called him my boy. Like, we didn't hold hands. There was no physical intimacy at all. It was very platonic, but he was a male friend. But the people around us, like not my family, my dad hated him. My mom liked him because he was a returned missionary. My dad hated him because his family utilized the welfare system of the church to get food. So he was never an option because there was no way I could do anything with that. But I enjoyed spending time with him because he was a male that accepted me for who I was. But he was not a romantic male that accepted me for who I was. Like Johnny and Michael accepted me for who I was and replaced the fact that I didn't have a father who loved me, but there was intimacy involved. And I'm going to say obligated intimacy. If I felt like if I didn't give them intimacy, I would not have been able to keep them in my life. But with Curtis was of the mindset that if he kissed a girl, that meant he was going to marry her. So he was like in that intimacy safe zone because he was not going to be intimate in any way, not even holding hands or, I mean, like we danced together, but it was still, we were dance partners, but not boyfriend, girlfriend dance partners. We were friends who danced together. And I think he wanted more, but because I was still in high school, he was just waiting. And then I met Mason in between, and Mason and I were definitely boyfriend, girlfriend, and holding hands and kissing a lot. Mason likes
I don't know what
to
you're
kiss.
talking about.
Do you like to kiss, Mason?
I do.
How often did we make out?
Probably about every chance we got.
So a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, at least we live 30 miles apart.
That's probably the only reason we made it to the temple.
No.
No, Mason would never have let it cross that boundary. Okay, so see, I had forgotten that. So one of the things that's really interesting, Ronnie, is that a lot of the details of the people I was attached to in high school for college, it's gone. Like those memories are gone. Like because I spent most of my junior year feeling very alone at the school. So you and I would have hung out in between your college classes and work and whatever.
Remember, I wasn't allowed to hang out with you still.
That's right.
It wasn't for
I came to your
forbidden,
house. That's when
but
I
it
started
was-
coming to your
yes,
house.
yes.
And I remember I was so confused as to why your parents had a full gym in their entryway. Because your stepdad is a huge, like, your stepdad and my son Eric would be buddy buddies because Eric is all about home gym,
Yes,
working out,
yes.
health. And your stepdad was like protein shakes, eating healthy.
Yeah. So then
Lifting
you were the one who
weights.
had to sneak around and you had to sneak to my house.
Isn't it interesting? Like everything about my everything about my life in my home, like even when I was a little kid, in order for me to have healthy, normal relationships, which I craved because I'm a human, I had to meet those needs in sneaking. What is the word I'm looking for, Mason or Ronnie? You're both incredibly intelligent human beings and educated. Like sneaking around behind somebody's back, like clandestine. I'll stick with. I came up with
Clandestine's
it.
a pretty good word,
That's
yeah.
my word.
Go for it. Use
Clandestine.
it.
Like, in order for me to get my normal developmental needs met, I had to do so in a clandestine manner because of the level of control over me. Number one, in Mormonism, there's a high level of authoritative control inside the Mormon church that a lot of people look at in this community as, oh, that's just healthy. We're trying to make sure you have good standards. They're not recognizing how much free will they're actually taking from their children and how much, you end up either becoming like this, I'm going to check all of the boxes and that means life is good. It's very difficult to find that nuanced space for many people. But then on top of that controlling Mormonism space, I had my parents who manipulated my Mormon beliefs to be even more intensely controlling, more intensely unhealthy. Because there's a lot of great people who come out of Mormonism who are healthy humans, despite the controlling upbringing. But mine never had a chance because of the personality disorders that my parents struggled with.
Well, and sorry, Mason, go ahead.
No, go right ahead. You were
He's
gonna
used
say
to
something,
being
do it.
interrupted by his wife.
I was going to change the subject. You keep going.
Just one of those, the ends justify the means things. I find that for the most part, and of course there's exceptions, but for the most part, the people that come out of Mormonism in a very quote unquote healthy way, like for instance me, I didn't ever have any desire to walk outside the lines. I was very happy being
you
inside
fit
the
in.
lines of Mormonism. But if you are not happy inside the lines, or your personality or your family upbringing or whatever it is that causes you to want to or to walk outside of those lines, it's very then difficult to end up happy in Mormonism because you're always going to you're going to butt heads with the authority of Mormonism. Whereas
Right.
I didn't butt heads. Essentially, I was being trained to become the authority in Mormonism.
Right.
And-
You were
and
a
that's a
happy
different
follower,
path.
compliant. And the reason you were in leadership is because you were unflinchingly obedient.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Except for the purple suits. That was
Right.
his act of rebellion.
That
Right,
was
I
the
mean, like-
only active rebellion.
I flinch a little bit at the thought of someone saying I was unflinchingly obedient because I don't really see myself that way. But when it came to at least the important standards of the church, I was always in line with those standards.
Right. Almost like within Mormonism, you were unflinchingly obedient, lack of critical thought. In other areas of your life, you applied some differentiation, but that was in order to fit into Mormonism.
Right.
Is that
And-
accurate?
And even my rebellion, you talk about the purple suit, the rebellion of the purple suit, it causes some people some pause maybe, but it doesn't cause any kind of issue with the standards of Mormonism.
Until you get called to be the bishop.
I
and
went
then
inside
it was
the
a
temple in the purple
no-no.
suit once. No one's going to stop you even going into the temple in a purple suit.
Right.
They might kind of, give you some faces and stuff and go, what the heck is going on here? But nothing stops me from being where I need to be
Right.
with that purple suit.
People
Even
either
if I
loved
had-
it or hated it.
if
There
I
was
had even
not very
fought
much
it-
in between.
If I'd even fought it as a bishop, I probably would have been okay. I said, no, I'm wearing this suit. There's nothing wrong with me wearing this suit. If you want me to
Right.
be the bishop, I'm wearing the suit.
Well, now you could wear your purple suit with a light blue shirt in Mormonism.
Okay, but wait, no, we have to come back to this, Mason, because I
for
have
it.
to know. Did you drink soda? Were you a soda drinking Mormon?
I was never a caffeinated soda drinking Mormon.
No,
Mormon.
no caffeine even.
No
Wow.
caffeine, yeah. Yeah,
He was a
and
good
I didn't
boy.
drink. I didn't drink very much soda anyway, but yeah, no caffeine.
So we talk a lot
Wow.
about, and I'm gonna Mason put you on the spot here a little bit.
Oh, good, because this is all about me. Like I figured I'd just sit here and not say much.
Well, no, Mason followed the line, Ronnie, so much that he never masturbated either.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe you're talking about this on a podcast.
We talk about a lot of stuff on this podcast, but yeah.
Are you not listening to my podcast? Aren't you one of my fans? Come
I
on,
do,
Ronnie. Yeah, no, but
There was sarcasm in that, Sunshine.
yeah, no, I definitely, there was sarcasm in my response as well. No, but yeah, Mason was so much in line that he was one of those that if the church said it was a no-no, it was a no-no. Like he was a little boy when he, one of his cousins or something was looking at porn and he went back to the cactus and burned the porn up so that it wasn't available anymore and whatnot.
What a good little boy.
What a good little boy. Yeah.
Good little boy.
Yep. Started a cactus on fire, right? In
No,
the
I
desert.
had to pull them out to light them up. But
Oh, you had to pull them out of the cactus to light
well,
them
the
up?
funny thing is that with that
That's
particular
I need to hear this story. Squirrel, go Mason.
Well, they'd stuffed them in like a hole in a cactus. I wasn't going to start a cactus on fire. Oh. So I just pulled the papers out and lit them on fire, or tore them
He
up.
was just
going
to burn the sin. He wasn't going to commit a sin when burning the sin. He was just going to burn the
he
sin.
lit him on fire with his eyes closed.
Well, and it's interesting.
No, he told me at once he still remembers those images, which reinforced the belief that once you see it, it's like seared in your brain in a negative way.
Right, that's actually what I was just going to say. The idea that some of those images, when I was 8 or 9 years old, so over 30 years ago, I can still remember some of those images like they were seared on my brain, and that serves to reinforce the idea that you don't want to touch this at all, you don't want to play with this at all. And so I didn't have any issues, even with a girlfriend. Before in high school, before going on my mission, I never came close to doing anything that would have been inappropriate or stopped me from going on a mission because it was not in my plan. It was not in my program.
Right.
And
Well,
so
and
I struggled a little bit with Sarah, but then, well, because then the change is coming that, like with Jen, if we were ever going to get married, it was years away. There was a mission still in the middle, so there was no getting close. But with Sarah, we didn't start to have any kind of issues until after we were engaged. And now your mind is changing. Like sex that was always completely off limits, no interest because it's off limits. Now it's becoming it's becoming a reality somewhere down the road, and so then your mind changes a little bit.
Right. Well, and I want to just say real quick, the reason those images were seared into your brain in that way probably had more to do with the fact that you were 8 years old seeing something that your 8-year-old brain isn't quite ready for. There's not that cognitive development.
Let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Yeah, anyway, so for the sexual images, Mason, it was those images were more seared in your brain because if you were to talk to somebody who actively uses pornography, they're not going to talk about my brain can catalog every single one of the things that I have looked at over the course. Like that just doesn't, unless there was something very meaningful or shocking. Like maybe the first couple of images, sure, but not all of them. That's just not the way the brain
Right.
The brain
Right,
works.
for sure. Well, and if you take that then to trauma, we're talking about the trauma that happened with you, Ronnie, and just that, that the way that it impacts you is going to cause, everybody's going to respond to that kind of trauma differently. It's going to impact you differently. And so that's kind of the whole point in this discussion, is just to recognize how that particular trauma, because you see, of course, how it affected Sarah in the book. You don't really see at all how it affected some of the other characters, which is why she had this idea of, hey, we're here, let's talk to some of these people and see how it did affect them, because lots of people are going to be in your position, Sarah, but even more people are going to be in your position where somebody else's trauma or situation affected you as well. And we're all about healing. We're all about recognizing how that impacted us, why or if it's still impacting us, and what we do with that.
Right. And I believe, so my brain is, y'all, I've been traveling quite a bit recently, so I might be getting this term wrong, but I believe that's called the secondary trauma response. So basically, if my house burns down, I have what they call the primary trauma. trauma response because it was my house that burned down. But the next door neighbor who watched the house burn down, they are the secondary trauma response. It doesn't necessarily mean they are less traumatized. It just means that because they were an observer and whatnot. And so in some ways, Ronnie, you're the primary traumatic response because you were the one that was exiled from the Lee home. Mm-hmm. But then you were also the secondary trauma recipient because then you were snuck back in, snuck back out. You were having to have basically an illicit friendship with your best friend and basically sister.
Well, and even to the point that I can remember going to Bible studies at Cheryl's house and you coming with me and your mom coming with you because you had to have that babysitter there with you, because even at something like a Bible study group or a youth group, you couldn't be trusted.
Right, because didn't I come to your church or was that at somebody's house? I
was
remember
at Cheryl's house.
I see. I don't remember. I have no recollection of that because my mom dropped the slut stalk Sarah piece as soon as my dad left for the summer to go work for his dad. And then when he came back, he was livid that I was still not being followed. Like he was livid. And I don't think he calmed down until he realized that Michael's brothers had moved, like, because, I mean, their family was horrifically impacted. It would be really interesting. I need to reach out to Luke or Brian and see if they'd be willing to come on to the show and whatnot and kind of talk about, you know, what their experience was as well, because their entire family dynamic was hit and shattered because of the way that because Michael's mom didn't handle it in a very healthy way either. And I don't talk about that in my book because that's not my story, but they ended up moving away from their mother and stepfather back down with their father, and they didn't come back. Well, and a lot of that had to do with what went down in the Isles Vincent home at the time.
Well, and there was stuff that, so Michael and I were really good friends. We became really good friends during the time that he was there.
He's a very good person.
There was stuff that I won't share because it's not my business to share and my information to share, but there was stuff that Michael was going through that was awful that we were having to see him through and deal with him through because of what happened
with my father,
with your dad.
Right. And his mother.
Yeah.
So when I've talked to him about it, it was my father and his mother that just literally destroyed a part of his soul, truly, through that experience. Yeah. So how did you heal? So in the last couple of minutes here of this, what would you say was your healing moment, and how are you able to move forward? Because you and I have obviously never drifted apart. We have maintained a close relationship since I was 14. I'm 42, y'all. So 13, 14. I'm 42, almost 45, 42 and a half. So we've been friends forever. You're one of my longest close friends ever. Because anytime I come to Snowflake, we hang out.
I know our goal was for our daughters to be BFFs, but we just live too far apart for that to happen.
But when they were little and they got together, they said they were.
Yes.
But now they have forgotten.
They've forgotten each other, and that breaks my heart a little bit.
They'll remember as they get older. And
So, okay.
Abby is unforgettable. So, you know, just saying.
To go back to our original question, we have so many random moments on this podcast.
Welcome to the show.
Yes. Believe it or not, it actually followed me around for quite a while.
Oh, I believe it.
I went through college without having a boyfriend. I went through many, many years of adulthood without having a boyfriend.
And you feel like this incident influenced that?
I didn't know why.
Okay.
And it wasn't until my husband started pursuing me and I found myself pushing him away that somebody was like, okay, you need to evaluate your life and you need to see what's happened to you. Like, what is causing you to push all of these people away who want to get close to you? Like, how have you gone through high school, college, being an adult and not had that kind of close relationship with somebody? And it wasn't until I started therapy that I was like, and I won't say that, I won't give your dad the power to say that it was just him that caused this, because
Right, but there was a strong, it was a strong influencing moment of your trauma that lasted.
There's about 3 things that caused that response in me, and that was one of the 3 that contributed to it. And it was the therapist who was actually able to help me figure out and work out why I was doing that and what the causes were and what we could do about it. And I mean, it obviously helped. I've been married to my husband for 10 years now, and we have a beautiful daughter, and I'm glad that I was able to work through that. But it, that's why it's so important to be honest with your friends and be like, what's wrong with you? Why are you doing this to people?
I would generally say don't ask your friend what's wrong with you. But yeah, I get it. What's wrong with you politely.
Yes. What's a nice way to put it?
Ronnie, what the fuck is the matter with you?
Sometimes
actually, I do say that.
You need it that way.
Weird, yeah. It's interesting to me that for you to talk about how the impact of this traumatic experience caused you to need therapy to work through it. Mm-hmm. Just to recognize that something that you might not consider, well, this was, this, if Sarah's thinking, well, this was my trauma, right? Mm-hmm. But to recognize that the impact on other people who were involved in this situation was significant enough that it required some unpacking, that it affected their life in ways that you didn't even recognize at the time. And then eventually were able to recognize and unpack and deal with and process and blah, blah, blah. It's incredible to recognize that that's the case and to see that trauma focused on one person has a ripple effect and sometimes a very powerful one.
Yeah, I love that you say that, Mason, because I knew that I was traumatized. Obviously, I'm me. And then, and my life was pretty dysfunctional. Don't worry, we can't, Ronnie's worried about the noise in the background. We cannot hear them. They're not coming through. So no need to redirect. They're doing just fine. So squirrel. But the other piece is I knew that
doesn't matter.
I knew that Michael was traumatized because in my young brain, that made sense because we were ripped apart and my dad was actively trying to hurt him. Whereas with you, Ronnie, it was you got kicked out and you weren't allowed back in. But my young brain would not have been like, that is actively traumatizing and actively hurting Ronnie. Like my dad went out of his way to hurt Michael. Whereas with you, he made a phone call and then we just weren't allowed to see each other anymore. And so it took me, years of growing up before I was like, oh my goodness, because my friendship with Kat never recovered. Like that one never recovered. And my friendship with Cassidy has never been as close. And I know that we drift apart quite a bit, but of that original friend group, of those 6 people that we have talked about, obviously if you've read the book, you know what my relationship has been off and on with Michael. Yay. But I still communicate and visit and have a strong relationship with you and with Declan. And Declan is not his real name. So maybe you'll find out what his real name is in a couple of weeks, but maybe you won't. But yeah, it was you and Declan and me that I've remained close to in that. And so, yeah, it's interesting. So as we're wrapping, go ahead, Mason.
One more thing too.
I keep saying as we're wrapping up and we keep talking.
Well,
that's normal
that's
too.
Pretty typical too, yeah. But Brene Brown, and I don't know that she came up with this idea, but she talks about the fact of comparing trauma isn't very helpful, right? You might look at somebody and go, well, this is what I went through, so y'all need to suck it up. That was barely even impactful. Like, I can see somebody saying, oh, yeah, well, you lost Sarah, but your whole friend group was still there. I mean, come on, what's the big deal, right? And the comparison is not helpful because it prevents us from being understanding and being empathetic. Instead, we say, I didn't realize how impactful it was. And then we come to understand, we have some empathy, we grow from that, and it doesn't matter that your traumatic story is maybe on a scale of 1 to 10, it's at an 8, and yours is maybe at a 4. It doesn't matter because the impact on us is still significant.
Well, you're talking about what's called comparative suffering.
Yes.
Yeah, because when we basically try and one up the other person of my trauma is worse than yours is... I'm basically placing myself superior and minimizing your
Right. It minimizes
experience.
their experience
Right.
and it prevents you from being able to understand each other and strengthen or
Right.
build a relationship.
What I'm saying is that at that time in my life, I wasn't comparative suffering with you, Ronnie. I didn't even realize you were suffering.
Right.
Probably because I was too absorbed in my own suffering to be able to see clearly anybody else's pain in that. So is there anything else you wanted to say before I ask you the final questions of the night, or?
No, I think I'm good. I'm ready. Let's go. Fire away.
How do you feel I did at representing the situation honestly?
Oh, I think are we saying, discounting that you forgot that I did go to NPC first?
So you're saying 99% accuracy because I missed one
Yes,
detail.
yes.
Okay. Yes.
Okay, 99% accuracy. No, I was actually super impressed that you have such a good memory, because I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Oh yeah.
Yeah, such is the nature of trauma. I remember the traumatic events. A lot of the good things, I have to search for those memories. Like when I go to the class reunion, people are like, oh, do you remember how funny this was? And I'm like,
Nope.
I do now. But yeah, those years, like when you're traumatized to that extent, your brain changes and your ability to hang on to the good things disappears because your protective mode is always on. And so the brain is going to naturally remember the bad things in order to protect you from those bad things occurring again. So a lot of my happy memories, like we drove into Snowflake, Mason and I drove into Snowflake 2 days ago. And as we drove into my old neighborhood and by my old house, I vomited. Like I had a full-blown panic attack, and we have spent the last, 2 days, day and a half or whatever, walking around my neighborhood, like on foot. I am retracing the steps. So we actually took Tyler today to the front of my home on 4th Street, and I showed him where my handprint is in the sidewalk. And as we've retraced those steps, and I've been able to go by, like I walked by the Jarvis home, and Verona Jarvis, who has now passed, which is why I'm using her real name, she was a huge mentor for me. When I was a youth, she demonstrated love. She had all boys, and she and I really connected. And she was like kind of a second mama to me. And as I walked by her home, I was like, I'm so sad that she's gone, but I have happy memories here too. So as I've retraced my steps, this is the first time I have purposefully re-walked those streets. I showed Mason the bar that what was it called?
I don't remember. I'm already trying to block it again.
Where I danced. And men put money in my pockets and panties. So anyway, that's in the book. If you haven't read the book, go get the book.
Spoiler
Alert. Right, which is why I did the spoilers. So most people who know my father describe him as a good man. How do you think I represented his ugly side? Once you got to see the ugly side, what are your thoughts there? Because like my siblings are claiming that I'm exaggerating and it's a lie. Now that you've seen that ugly side, what are your thoughts?
Oh, that's a hard one.
That same question for my mom too. The one that stood by.
So I don't think it's an exaggeration. I honestly don't. I was there the day that he ripped you out of school. I saw the fury on his face. I was in the room when he called. Yes, I was in the room when he called my mom and yelled at my mom. You could hear his voice through the phone. And I was the one that was there when he refused to let me in his house so I could grab your yearbook so I could take it to the dance to get it signed. I mean, maybe he did a really good job of hiding it from them, like he did a really good job of hiding it from me up until that point. Yeah. To give them the benefit of the doubt. But no, I don't think you exaggerated at all when you report the explosion and the aftermath and everything that happened.
What was it like for you to read our story?
It was weird. I'm going to be honest. It was weird. I was like, whoa, this is me. I'm the one who did that. I'm the one who taught Sarah how to drive a stick shift.
Yes, you are. Because my feet were too damn short to depress the brake and the clutch fully in my dad's 1966 pickup.
Yeah.
That they wanted me to drive so I wouldn't crash the family car. And they made me drive that until my mom was in there and realized I was not exaggerating, telling them when I push the brake, the car doesn't stop. Like, that's what I was telling them, because I didn't have enough knowledge at, 16 to be like, I can't push the brake all the way to the floor. I would push the brake and the truck wouldn't even slow down. Like, I mean, the what do they call it? Like the trigger sensitivity, like in a gun in that truck. Like, you had to depress that brake a good foot before the brake would engage all. And I couldn't push it past the... I ran that thing off the road so many times because I couldn't stop at a stop sign because it wouldn't stop because I couldn't push the brake.
I know. It is. I will tell you that it is really weird, like having the wisdom of a 44-year-old reading the actions of a 17-year-old, me being the 17-year-old,
Right.
not you. And just thinking, wow, you really failed as a friend in this case, or wow, you really didn't handle that situation right. So there were some instances that I was like, I should have seen, I should have known. But I have to remember that I'm reading it with the wisdom of a 44-year-old. And back then I was a 17-year-old who didn't even know what real life was.
And we're dealing with your own trauma.
Yeah.
You were dealing with your own issues. And I think that's why it's important that you ask that question, how did I do from your perspective? Because it is about your perspective. One of the problems with your dad and why there's been so much struggle there and why there's
The reason we don't have
disconnection
a relationship today
is because he cannot see it from someone else's perspective, either because he chooses not to or he doesn't have the capacity. I'm not sure, but he cannot see it from someone else's perspective. And because in his mind, that's not what happened, everyone else is lying or everyone else is confused or whatever. And that's, of course, the exact opposite of empathy and understanding. Right. You have to be able to step in someone else's shoes, and you can't correct. You look back and like, man, I really failed as a friend that time. Well, you can't change that. You can't look at yourself now and go, okay, but what about now? Do I still do those things now? No, I don't. Or yes, I do. I got to fix that. You can't do that. So you look at yourself in this book and go, yeah, that's an honest representation. Am I still that way?
And, look how much I've grown as...
Right, that's the way it goes. Or you go to Sarah and say, hey, you know what? I didn't realize that I kind of failed you there. How you doing? And you address it, right? If you can talk about it, then you can resolve it. Mm-hmm. If you can't talk about it or you can't see it from someone else's perspective, it never changes.
Well, and I can say, as the 16-year-old version of Sarah that needed the 18-year-old, 17, 18-year-old version of Ronnie, you did not fail me. You were everything that I needed, and you continued to put in the effort to show up in my friendship, in my friend group. You are the only one, because did Declan graduate with you?
He's a year younger
He's
than
a year
I am.
younger. Okay, so yes, that's right, because he was there. Declan was mad at me for what went down with my dad and for something else. I disclosed something confidential that he had shared with me, and then the stuff went down with my dad, and the two events combined. He had a lot of healing that he had to do before our friendship could resume normally. But you were the only one in my friend group that put in the effort to stay. Like, Michael never came back, never showed up. It was like he gave up and quit. And you see that in the book. Like, I waited for him, bags packed, for months, and he never came. So I had to choose to move on, and you stayed. You were there every step of the way. My clandestine, illicit best friend. Even as, and we'll end with this. So this story. So, there was a time in our life, early in Mason's and my marriage, where a member of Mason's family moved in with us because they were having some marital struggles. And that individual treated me like shit. And I looked at Mason and I said, either he goes or I go. I'll be at Ronnie's. Let me know when he's gone. and I drove down to your house and we watched an R-rated movie because when I am pissed, I have to do something rebellious. So I watched an R-rated movie at your house. I don't remember what one. And we ate Captain Crunch. Was that in this house?
It had to have been. This is the only house I've lived in as an adult.
Okay, so I came to this house where we are recording today. It was brand new for you. Like you showed me around. You were so excited. This was right after you purchased this place. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I came to this house until my husband could shape up and I could go home. Do you remember that? Do you remember us eating? No, I don't think it was this house. You were in a very small single wide rental.
The one behind my grandparents.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. It wasn't this house.
I forgot about that
because I was like,
I'm
it
glad
was
you
not
figured out
this
because
big.
that was a really important detail to this story.
It is.
It is to
We're
me.
going for
dang it.
accuracy tonight.
Truth-telling series. We're in the middle of the truth-telling series.
We should
Sarah
spend
fucked
3
up with the
minutes on that.
NPC
Yeah, for sure.
moment. Okay, so yes, I came to you. It was in that teeny tiny trailer, and we
Yes.
watched movies and ate Captain Crunch, and I spent the night. And in the morning, I went home because Mason was like, "Whoa, Sarah sets a boundary. Sarah honors the boundary." But no, you continued to make active effort to stay.
Okay, but I think we need to clarify that at that time, Captain Crunch cereal was our thing, and it was very special for us.
I will not eat that with you today.
I was not calling it in by feeding you cereal. I was taking care of you by feeding you cereal.
Yes.
I do not eat it anymore because it hurts my mouth.
Same. And it raises my blood sugar. We got old.
Sugar frosted razor blades. That's what they are.
Yes.
Because I'm too old.
Yes. We have aged and we are too old for Captain Crunch. But
We just gotta let it get soggy now.
I know. And then anything soggy is just nasty. All right. So do you have anything else you want to say before we sign off for the night?
No, this has been lovely.
Mason, how about for you? Anything?
No.
It has been lovely.
It's like, may God be with you in your journey. That's what Mason has to say.
That did sound just like me, yeah. Especially right now as I have deconstructed my whole religious world.
Yeah. Mason's deconstructed an entire religious world.
He's like, no.
So yeah. I'm just going to end, Ronnie, with I love you.
Love you too.
Your chosen family, closer than a sister. And I hope our listeners have enjoyed this. So we will be continuing to do this. We will be interviewing some of the other primary characters from the book, Trauma Bonded, a true story of navigating attachments forged in complex PTSD. I love you, Ronnie. Friends forever. BFFs. Like truly.
Yes.
Best friends forever. Love you so much.
Love you back.
Thanks so much for joining us tonight. We'll see you next time. Bye. Unpacking Mormonism and Other Religious Trauma is hosted by Sarah and Mason Westbrook, produced by Daisy Girl Communications, LLC, and Alex Vidalis. Please join our community on Facebook. Music provided by Musa and John Worthy Music. Super excited. Our next guest has shown up. Which is all happening tonight, but our listeners get to wait in deep anticipation for a couple of weeks. So, ta-da!